Welcome to Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz, a transparent and engaging conversational dive into meaningful topics impacting local government in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck Insights is dedicated to removing barriers between the city of Bismarck and the citizens we serve every day.
Hello and welcome to Bismarck Insights. I'm Bismarck Mayor Mike Schmitz, and today we're going to focus on Bis-Man transit and public transportation. And with me is Deidre Hughes, who's the Executive Director for Bis-Man Transit. But before we get too far into it, Deidre, why don't you let the audience know a little bit about you and your educational background and what brought you to be in your current position?
Absolutely, thank you. So yes, you touched on it. I'm the Executive Director for Bis-Man Transit. I've been in this role for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was the Marketing and Mobility Manager for Bis-Man Transit. So I've been in the public transportation industry now for going on 7 years this month. So a lot of learning in those 7 years.
Yep.
But prior to that, I did complete my Bachelor's of Science in Marketing, and then I also do have an MBA. So I have the textbook education, but really public transportation, it's hands-on education for it. So I've been fortunate enough to kind of grow with the company as well.
Sure. They probably, yeah, like you said, they probably don't teach transportation in general in a business degree per se, but it's a very important piece of how we get to and from places in our community or communities. So let's talk a little bit about what Bis-Man Transit is and how it came to be and a little history. Let's give the people a little history lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone probably sees both our CAT bus, which is our larger bus driving around the community, as well as our smaller paratransit vehicles. But the understanding of how those actually work within the system and how they're placed within the city of Bismarck is, I think, a little bit gray and cloudy for some people. So Bis-Man Transit first started doing transportation back late 80s, early 90s. It was a nonprofit organization. Funding sources were a little sketchy at that point in time. Yep. And really the sole purpose of public transportation at that point was to try and find a mode of transportation for elderly and the disabled communities. So for about 15 years, that was the only transportation that was being completed on the public side of things. In 2004, Bis-Man Transit started Capital Area Transit, which is the CAT bus. That is our fixed route service that travels 6 routes in Bismarck and Mandan, 1 over in Mandan, and then 5 in Bismarck. And that's for the general public. So those are those fixed routes where you know they're traveling past, say, Kirkwood Mall at a set point in time, and anyone can flag down the bus system and jump on the bus.
And they can flag it down a bus at anywhere along the route, correct?
Yeah.
Except an intersection.
Yes. And there are a few spots throughout the community that we don't allow, flag down just for safety. One of those is on Expressway, kind of coming down the hill by Cashwise, and then over on Century. But other than that, if you're on a bus route and you see the bus driving past, as long as you're on the passenger side of the vehicle, you can flag down the bus and they'll pull over within a half block and let you board. That's a little bit different than a lot of communities that have the dedicated stops. And I think there's a lot of confusion about a flag down system because people want to look at a timetable and say, okay, I need to be here at this exact time. But the benefits of a flag down system is you're not having to walk an extra 6 blocks to a bus stop. You're able to just simply, green route runs here, I can step to the curb, wave down the bus, and they're able to stop for them.
So we have these 6 routes in Bismarck and then the route in Mandan. Are there intersecting points so people understand, like obviously one bus route may not get you to where you need to be from point A to point B. So where are kind of those intersecting or hub spots?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are the exception to the flag down system. We do have dedicated stops where we transfer buses. We call those our transfer points. The main one is right north of the event center on Front Avenue. There's 2 shelters there, and that is where 5 of our buses meet every other hour and 4 of them meet every hour. We do also have another transfer point up by Bismarck State College. There's a shelter right there on campus where we have 2 routes that meet. And then over on Mapleton Avenue, that is near Dakota I and like Sicky's restaurant, there is a transfer point there as well.
Okay. And the fixed route runs on set hours. What are those hours?
Correct, yes. So the fixed route runs from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday, we start an hour later. So that's 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And not on Sundays?
No Sunday service for the general public.
Okay. And as we look at those fixed routes, we're talking about that right now. We have another system that we'll visit about as well. But those fixed routes generally cover what geographic areas within our two communities, so that people kind of get a sense of, where they maybe need to get to if they want to use the bus system, which is available to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of starting with Mandan, that's our purple route. So that's a little bit longer route that isn't quite the 60-minute route like our Bismarck routes are, but we'll start out at Bismarck State College, leave there, cross the river, and then we're going all the way up to the new high school. We're right by Walmart, and then we travel down Sunset, and we can get over on Main Street. We're going past the library, down to Family Fair, and then even as far south as the Fort Lincoln Elementary School.
Okay.
Then when we're coming back to Front Avenue to catch that transfer point, we're traveling on the Strip, and then we're going on Mackenzie Avenue all the way by Family Wellness and over by the water park, and then coming back to Bismarck. So people who are in Mandan who want to get to Bismarck,
Yep.
That's kind of the route that they're going to be taking.
Sure.
As far as our 5 routes in Bismarck, we're going all the way out to University of Mary with our green route. We're going all the way up to like 43rd, Skyline right by North Walmart, all the way over as far east as the Family Fair location on Yorktown. Okay. So we're trying to cover as much as we can. So our service area is actually 56 square miles. So for us to try and cover geographically all of that with the routes that we do have, there's a lot that goes into that route planning.
And being that big a geographic area, that's why the transfer points are critical, and being able to get from North Bismarck all the way out to the University of Mary, you're probably going to be on more than one bus.
Yes.
Which obviously is some of the time situation. And you mentioned what's the desired result as our current system is set up for the route run? What's it's a 60-minute run, or?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
so as you're planning your day,
Mm-hmm.
you probably need to plan, commute time of a little more than 60 minutes, probably.
Yes.
Especially if you need to transfer buses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Besides the fixed route, we call it paratransit, but it probably gets used more than that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the term paratransit, just to give a little bit of a history lesson on what paratransit is. Paratransit is a term used by the ADA, and it refers to the service that is required when a community has a fixed route bus system. There needs to be a complementary service that is provided for disabled individuals. In our community, we do open that up to elderly as well, but that is not part of the requirement. What it is a door-to-door service where users are able to schedule their ride up to 14 days in advance, but at a minimum of 1 day in advance. And we just need to know, point of origin and destination, and that's pretty much it, as long as they're a certified user. So what certification kind of looks like is they apply, have an application where we go through, ask about their disability, ask where they live, emergency contacts, all that, and then we send a verification form to their provider, whether that's a social worker, an occupational therapist, a doctor, whatever it might be, just verifying that their disability qualifies them to use the service. Once they're qualified, they're qualified for 3 years, and then we do a recertification. But what that service really is meant for is for those individuals who cannot use the fixed route service.
Because of accessibility to the
Correct.
to the bus, or getting to the bus route, and things like that. What is it open to the general public?
No, at this point in time, paratransit is exclusive to elderly and disabled. And those paratransit hours that we're required to operate is anytime that fixed route bus is on the road, we need to be providing paratransit service. Now, the exception to that, bringing up general public, is any time that the fixed route bus isn't on the road, paratransit service now shifts, that definition changes to demand response. And demand response is kind of like a dial-a-ride in a lot of other communities where potentially we could open that up to the general public. It's not a requirement to be exclusive at that point in time, but that's kind of where the differences are. But at this point, no, our paratransit is exclusive to those certified individuals.
Okay. But we operate the paratransit on different set of hours,
Correct.
or additional hours, probably is a better term, than the fixed routes run. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that is a significant concern in the community.
Absolutely. So we do offer a very robust schedule for our paratransit service. So Monday through Saturday, we're starting service as early as 5:30 a.m. and ending at midnight. On Sundays, we do run a shortened schedule, 7:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. But this is a very, very expansive system and service hours compared to a lot of other communities in the Midwest. Looking at like comparable service all the way to Sioux Falls, Billings, St. Cloud, we have one of the most, like I said, robust systems. Not to say we can't, always be working and improving and providing services for the community, but we do have a much, much larger system.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I know we're in the midst of looking at how we may be able to improve transportation for the public. It's funded publicly, so it's public transportation. But you have done some research to see, how are we comparing, and we know we want to be better. Mm-hmm. But the goal would be that we're the best, right?
Correct.
We're offering the best service that anybody in our region is, and I'm glad you've done that research. So, what are the things you've heard? I know I've been hearing things, but what have you heard that people want to see from transportation in Bismarck and Mandan, and I guess we don't really go all to Lincoln, but that I'm sure people would like to see that too. But
yes, yeah, we actually do provide paratransit service to Lincoln, just no fixed route service. So dating back to, I guess, when I started at Bis-Man Transit back in 2018. In the marketing role, I did a lot of community surveys. I would do outreach, working with higher education or the public school systems, and a lot of what we've been hearing since then, all the way up till yesterday, has been longer hours for our general public users. We're not able to, with our current system, get individuals to their third shift jobs or home from their second shift jobs, or kids want to go to a movie, but ending at 7 o'clock, it makes it really, really tricky. So having to promote the services, we can get you there, but we might not be able to get you home, has been a barrier for us. And that has probably been the number one feedback or concern that we've heard over the years, is expanding those service hours to help accommodate some of those later events that people want to participate in the community.
And that is part of the restriction that's created by not just maybe hours available of drivers, right? Finding more drivers, but also funding. Mm-hmm. So Bis-Man Transit it's unique in a way, because it's kind of a private entity, because it's not for profit. It's not part of either of the cities, but the funding comes as a result of the two cities. So let's talk about funding a little bit, and then we're going to talk about what has recently happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you touched on it. I'm not a city department. Bis-Man Transit is actually a nonprofit organization that is contracted by the city of Bismarck to provide public transportation. And there's a lot of restrictions and expectations that are set forth by the city of Bismarck that we have to follow, but we are our own entity. That doesn't mean that we're generating funding on our own. A lot of our funding is being trickled through the city of Bismarck. So our federal grants come through the city of Bismarck, and we are a subrecipient of those grants. Federal grants make up about 50% of what we actually are expending throughout the year. So we have a number of grants that are formulary, meaning that we get them without any application throughout the year. That's our standard operating grant. And then we have some competitive federal grants that we are applying for each year to help offset the costs of purchasing vehicles, upkeep to the facility, and then paying for our after hours or our extra service on the paratransit. We're receiving some operating assistance from that as well. Other funding that we currently have is some state aid through the state of North Dakota. Recently, the State Bill 2254, we actually received about $192,000 is what I think it's going to play out to be for the next 2 years in assistance for as we have a fixed route service. So other fixed route providers in North Dakota are going to be getting that as well. That's kind of some of the local side, and then obviously the biggest chunk of our funding on the local side comes from our property mill levies that we currently have through both Mandan and Bismarck. So we have 3 mills through the city of Bismarck, 2 for the city of Mandan, and then we do have just a standard contract to provide service to the city of Lincoln. So that's the majority of our funding. I mean, we always have kind of other things that we're trying to do to generate revenue, our advertising, sales, things like that, smaller portions of our funding.
And even though it's not a large fee, there is a small amount of funding that comes from the fee to ride. Correct. But let's talk about that, because I don't think people understand probably how economical that is for them. What does it cost for a person to ride the bus?
Sure, yeah, excellent point. So to have a one-way trip on our CAT bus, that one that's open to the general public, is $1.50. We do also offer reduced fares for students, for individuals that have a Medicare card, veterans, so that's 75 cents then for a one-way trip. And we offer a couple of different options for tickets, so if they want an all-day pass, if they want an unlimited monthly pass, that's $24 for our discounted fares, and then $36 for our full fares. So if you know you're going to be riding the bus 10 times a week, you know, those unlimited passes really make sense. On the flip side, our paratransit service is $3 one way, no matter what. We do work with, Medicaid and can do some medical billing, things like that, but it's $3 is the standard cost. One nice thing that I think a lot of people don't know about is if you are a registered user on our paratransit service, you are able to ride the CAT bus for free. So as long as you have the card that says you're certified with Bis-Man Transit, you're able to get on any of our CAT buses at any time for free. And then we also do allow individuals over 65 to ride our CAT bus for free.
So very economical to get from point A to point B, especially if you're not able or willing to drive, and you don't have to use a cab or an Uber or a Lyft, which costs more than that. So when we look at going forward, we know that there was an initiated measure in the cities, both cities, Bismarck and Mandan, for additional sales tax revenue. And as we're looking at how we expand the service, that's going to be critical to funding that. What do you hear from the riders and the communities, the hours they would like to see, and route design for both paratransit or on-demand and fixed route?
Yes, absolutely. We've been getting a lot of feedback. Obviously, there's been a lot more exposure to public transportation in the past couple of years due to the initiated measures in both communities. So as I mentioned earlier, the longer service hours on the CAT bus has been really a hot topic for us, even starting a little bit earlier to help get individuals to school or to work. Starting at 7 o'clock, if that trip's going to take you a little bit longer, you might be cutting it close getting to work by 8 o'clock. So possibly shifting our hours so we're, opening at 6 o'clock and ending at 10 o'clock, that one has been, pushed pretty heavily. There's been some interest in possibly shifting some of the routes so that we're getting closer to some hospitals. I guess one of the other things is possibly a circular route or an express route. So our standard routes are 60 minutes, like we touched on earlier. If there is an option for us to have either an express route that's, say, 30 minutes that we're getting from North Bismarck to South Bismarck, or even Bismarck to Mandan, or in more of our service district areas, we're hitting the Dream Center, Soup Kitchen, and having some sort of higher frequency route, that's been really talked about pretty heavily. On the paratransit side of things, I think the number one thing I've heard is expanding our Sunday hours so that we're not stopping service at 2:30, possibly looking at extending that out to 6 o'clock, giving individuals who want to spend time with family or church events a little bit more time, rather than I just got to church, now I got to turn around, get on the bus, and get home. And then with that Sunday service, possibly coming up with some way that we're able to facilitate a general public transportation on Sundays. Because like we mentioned right now, there is no general public service on Sundays. And that that is a gap that I think we're missing in the community to get people out there.
Do we have restrictions to be able to open that up to the general public, that on demand? As long as we're meeting the other requirements, if we have funding available, we can do that then.
Yes, absolutely. So no, we don't have any restrictions that would prevent us from opening our paratransit service on Sundays to the general public. More so, I think our restrictions might be staffing those buses.
And we'll come to that here in a minute.
Absolutely. And making sure that there still is capacity for the users who do require accessible vehicles, because that can be a challenge. But as far as, federal restrictions, as I mentioned, if that fixed route bus isn't operating, it's now demand response, and technically that can be open to the general public. We would still require a one-day notice for us to get the trip scheduled, but it's something that we can definitely look at exploring.
Okay, and let's talk about staffing a little bit. First off, the staffing is contracted. It's not exactly a Bis-Man Transit employee. There are very few actual employees of Bis-Man Transit, but knowing that, what are we finding in the community, the ability or lack thereof to find additional drivers, because that's really what it's going to take.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you mentioned it. The operations employees, so that's our drivers, our dispatchers, our maintenance, they are actually subcontracted by Bis-Man Transit to a company called We Drive You. Previously National Express. So we've had a contract with them since fall of 2017, and we've been, wonderful service, and it's really great to have them as a partner. But just like every other industry that has drivers, and especially CDL drivers, there has been a lot of ups and downs with staffing. And we've worked pretty closely with them to try and get pay raises, additional benefits, to keep those employees and help retain them, working with them on, scheduling their vacation time off. I have a really wonderful general manager. His name's Craig Thomas, and he's been, with us the whole time that I've been there. And he is so dedicated to providing the service that even as a general manager, he has been out driving buses when we've been short. Obviously, that's not an ideal situation, so we've been really, really heavy about recruiting in the past since COVID, basically, really pushing recruiting. We are constantly attending job fairs. Anytime that there's an opportunity for recruitment, without going through their corporate office, we're there.
So let's talk. What are we looking? What are they looking for drivers? Do they need to be full-time drivers? Can we? I'm in the recruitment side here. How can we maybe encourage some citizens who maybe they've retired early? Maybe they've retired and they're just looking for something to do. Probably is a great way to meet people if you're driving. I hear, people driving school buses, they like to meet people too. What are they looking for? Is there some requirements that they need to have to place a driver?
Yeah, obviously it's the standard background checks. We want to make sure that we're having safe individuals who are going to be transporting individuals. But aside from that, Craig is really, really great about working with individual schedules. And if we're talking about expanding, we're going to need to be really thinking heavily about how we're going to get the right individuals into those seats. So we'll work with part-time employees. Obviously, we do like some full-time employees to make sure that they're knowing the routes and the services. But we have a lot of retired individuals. We have people who used to be bus drivers or used to be drivers in other communities that'll move here, and they like having that option of working, 4 days a week, and then they have, 3 days off. But they're talking to the community and they're seeing what's going on out there. As far as training, if someone is interested in getting their CDL, Craig actually does CDL training. So we can get people trained into those positions without having that passenger training. And then a paratransit side of things, we actually don't require a CDL. So if you're thinking, I don't want to be driving those big buses, we have that option of
that's
a
a lower level. That's like a chauffeur's license. There's still a license requirement above driving your car.
Yes, there's still certifications.
So people, if you have a desire to maybe supplement some retirement income or just to have something to do, give Bis-Man Transit a call, because it is going to be critical. We are definitely looking at, and I know that because of the way the initiative measure was worded and passed, there will be funding available, and we will be looking to expand services, and we have to probably get some creative in some situations too, And what have we heard from the steering committee on that? Like, what are their expectations, do you think?
So the steering committee has been very, very active with what public transportation looks like in our communities, and we really appreciate all the people who are stepping up and understanding that this is such a huge issue for our community. But again, coming back to those expanded hours, the biggest thing is those users or those steering committee members want to make our community more accessible to elderly, disabled, and the general public. That is probably one of the biggest focuses that I've seen is how can we get people wherever they want to go at a reasonable time. Also making sure that we're shoring up our books and making sure that our deficit that we've been projecting for years is taken care of. Once that's done, now let's get down to the meat and potatoes and figure out what we can do to improve our service, or what are we doing that's great right now that we really don't want to touch.
Yep. And you brought it up, and maybe I haven't avoided it, but we just had so much other stuff to talk about. But Bis-Man Transit is a not-for-profit that is largely funded by government funding, one source or another. And the reality is, when you have $1.50 to take the bus, that's not going to pay for the operations. And so, for everybody to understand, part of the reason for the initiative measure was to shore up the budget. And we've talked about this in the steering committee. We know that it's somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 annually right now that the service has been deficit spending. Been able to do that because we've had sources that we had saved, I guess, from various grants through some very fortuitous opportunities probably that came about for reasons that weren't really great.
Yes.
But that's a known need. And we also know that this initiative measure is going to provide us additional funding to provide some additional services in the communities at some point in time, whether it's through Bis-Man Transit or we find a unique way to deliver some other on-demand services. We'll have to see. But Deidre, I really appreciate you taking the time today to visit with me and try to share a little information about Bis-Man Transit. Hopefully the public now has a better understanding, and we do encourage people, if you really don't want to drive, or if you want to even try the bus system, please do. It really is there for the general public. I realize not everybody can use it. Their schedules maybe don't allow it. They maybe need a car because they got to get places at a certain time. But if your job maybe allows you to do that, hey, give it a try. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep.
Thank you for watching Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz. If you have specific topics or questions you'd like addressed in future episodes, email mschmitz@bismarcknd.gov. Or call the City of Bismarck at 701-355-1300. To learn more about the City of Bismarck, visit bismarcknd.gov or follow us on a variety of social media channels by searching BismarckND.gov. Bismarck Insights is a collaboration between Dakota Media Access and the City of Bismarck. You may find Bismarck Insights episodes on Government Access Channels 2 and 602, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV devices, on Radio Access 102.5 FM and on demand at freetv.org.